Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I hope your conference has been going well, and it's sure nice to see you here this morning. Welcome to the digital denizens of the killer bees. It is a privilege to be here with you for this, our 7th annual presentation. Back in 2008, we began our collaborative in these hallowed halls, and now we are proud to be back in Dallas. The bees include Bonnie B, Diane B, Warren B, and I'm your designated driver, Mark B. Prepare to be amazed, entertained, elucidated, and inspired. It is our distinct honor to keep bringing you the cutting edge of technological and pedagogical innovation for early childhood classrooms. As a foreshadowing, here's just a few of some of the apps and tools that we'll be presenting to you today. So let me go ahead and get started. We're each going to present, just introduce ourselves as we come on. And I've been an educator for approximately 35 years, currently the Director of Teacher Education Programs in the Child Learning Development Center at Pacific University, where I founded an early learning environment for young children, the early learning community. And at the ELC, I have the pleasure of working with an outstanding group of educators and students. It's an exemplary early learning environment, and it includes 3- and 4-year-olds and kindergartners, and soon we're adding 1st and 2nd graders. I learn from them every day, and virtually all of what I share with you here today comes from the work being done at the ELC. And so if you should happen to venture into the wilds of Oregon, I invite you to come out and visit us. So here's a short intro of what I'll be presenting on today. I'm going to start with just a little foundation on children learning and technology. We're going to explore some digital tools. I'll talk to you about a case study that I started last year that I really need to finish the story on, and we'll make sure we share some resources with you. But I'd like to start today by framing my talk within the current neoliberal zeitgeist of educational commodification and standardization. Said that just for you. Yeah. There you go. In schools throughout our country, the narrative has been for us to push children to do more and to learn more at an increasingly early age. And this standardized academic focus is not in the best interests of children, and it is stressful, cutting into time that could be more appropriately spent in exploratory play. I encourage us all to remember that children construct an understanding of the world through authentic experiences that meaningfully connect to their world. And this is a point made by Kathy Hirsch-Passing at our keynote. It is through extended playful activities that children learn best, in those meaningful contexts that she was talking about. So teachers can best support children's learning by employing best practices in a thoughtfully intentional manner to create opportunities for inspirational, student-centered activities, and therefore utilizing technology that is based on these principles we understand of children's learning, and on the work of these attentive and focused teachers who are thoughtfully selecting tools and pedagogy that will connect with students' playful explorations. That's the key. So how do you do that, and what is a good tool, and how does it all come together? Well, there's quite a few support structures in place that point at the thoughtful selection of both tools and pedagogy. And I would first point you to the position statement as a guiding document. While this has now been around for about 3 years, And all of us have said, oh sure, yeah, all right, position statement, yeah, that's great. I'd like each of you to ask yourself if you've really, truly, thoroughly read it and what it says. Because it's quite a marvelous document put together by some really sharp folks. And while it's kind of nice to have and hold, it's only if you read it carefully and thoughtfully and thoroughly that it will really be effective. And use it, apply it in classrooms. And if you want to take a look at what that looks like, there's a marvelous new book that has just been published with examples of exemplary practice from a wide range of educators from around the world. And I encourage you to take a look at this book as well as a place to get ideas and inspiration. And so thanks to Chip Donahue for his guidance on both of these ventures. Okay, so teachers can best support all the learning that takes place in classrooms, in essence through this child-initiated, child-directed, teacher-supported, and in this case, play with digital devices. There's no reason that the sorts of play that children engage in with all other manner of manipulative materials shouldn't be mirrored with the kinds of play that they do with digital devices. Now keep in mind that quality always matters. That's the distinction, again, that Kathy Hirsch-Pasek was making between quantity and quality. Quality is what really matters. And so keep in mind the 3 C's, that notion of the child, the context, and the content. It's not just the technology that you're evaluating, but the match with the child that is critical. So it's not just the technology. It is how you use it. So review that technology, but keep in mind child, context, and the content. Providing one perspective on the manner in which we can use tools in classrooms is the work of Ruben Fuentedura, who encourages teachers to think in terms of what each tool adds to the learning process. What exactly is gained by the use of this particular app or manipulative? Is there a functional improvement in the learning opportunity that goes on? Is there a significant redesign of the task we might talk about? Or in fact, are there newly conceivable tasks? Is this transformational and something that's really totally new and unique? And so I want to take us back to, that's right, Bloom's taxonomy. Do you remember old Benjamin? Well, the notion is that all cognitive objectives are not created equal, that at the lowest level is the simply just remembering stuff, and then later or at higher levels, understanding and the ability to apply, synthesize, evaluate, create. So the idea is moving from lower level to higher level objectives as we think in terms of the kinds of focuses we want for the learning that might take place. Well, Ruben builds on this and says the same is true with technology. We can use technology to do the same old, but now we have to plug it in and recharge it instead of just paper. And that might not necessarily be any advantage. It's simply just a substitution. But at higher levels, we can augment or modify or sometimes fundamentally redesign the learning tasks that might take place. And so what this looks like is, again, maybe the distinction between writing on an iPad versus writing on paper at the lowest substitution level, or maybe modifying that slightly through the use of StoryKit that allows for video and audio, or maybe at higher levels, Storybird, which is that collaborative building of a story with someone online that can be shared, or finally at the highest levels, imagine writing for a 3-year-old who doesn't have the small motor skills to be able to use a pencil, but in fact can, through the use of speech to text, create their stories and have them recorded, as Dragon eventually will be able to do. So here is my entreat to you. Learn all you can about technologies. Carefully assess their quality and their pedagogical applicability. then put them away on the shelf with the crayons and the markers and the tape and the scissors. And think about your students. Listen to your students. Think about what it is they need. What is your objective for a learning activity? What is the itch that these students need to scratch? And then pull out the tool that's appropriate for that. And sometimes it will be a digital tool. Pick those tools that will empower your students and allow and encourage them to explore a topic deeply. Listen to your students. Empower their learning so they can go deeply into explorations that are meaningful for them. Now, I put together a website that contains quite a few materials that are useful to educators. And you can find it at tinyurl.com/ECE best practices. So that's tinyurl.com/ECE best practices. And what it contains is a variety of tools. You can see there's microscopes and cameras and tablets and whiteboards and the new case study that I've added. Lots of materials with video clips, photos, and all kinds of examples if you're looking for further ideas about the use of these tools. And so, for example, if you went to the digital microscopes page, you'd see lots of examples of children using them and some explanations of how that might work. So let's focus on microscopes for a moment. These are a really amazing and innovative tool. And what their strength is the ability to open up hidden worlds to children for playful exploration. The notion of how does that work? Wow, what's going on inside there? And so for a number of years I've been bringing microscopes to these hallowed halls, and the microscopes have changed and evolved and gotten better with time. These are all designed by a microscope company, Microscope, all made in the United States. And there have been some that are high resolution, some that are simply detached, and you can actually attach to your cell phone. That's what I presented last year, or to an iPad. And this year I brought the Proscope HR2. It's a high-resolution microscope that has a resolution of 1600 by 1200, which is really quite amazing. And I'll show you some of the images that it took, which was really breathtaking to the children. It'll do streamed live images as well as photographs and video. But you don't start with a microscope. You start with children's interest. So last spring, we were hatching moths and butterflies, Saturnid moths in the form of Prometheus and Polyphemus, as well as painted ladies. And so we started by raising these butterflies from eggs, holding them in our hands, watching them climb around, fly around the classroom, looking at symmetry, painting them, drawing them, documenting them, taking them outside, letting them go free. And as the children were holding them, they noticed that some of the color from the butterflies would rub off on their fingers. And so the question was, what makes the color of the wing on a butterfly? So we tried to investigate that. We looked it up online, we looked at a number of apps, and then we pulled out the microscope. And so this is one of the photographs taken of a Polyphemus wing by this digital microscope. And on it you can see the individual scales. And so I'll show you the scale of a painted lady. You'll notice each of the individual scales here, and you see this part right here? That's where the scales have rubbed off on the children's hands. So what makes the color rub off on my hand? It's because the scales are actually coming off of the butterfly wings. So what do you think then was the next thought in the classroom? We have to stop touching their wings. And suddenly there was a new consciousness about, oh, we have to be very careful with the butterflies. And a close look at what it is that it meant to be caring for the butterfly, and the documentation then that followed was really quite amazing. So what this microscope did was not only add to the deep exploration, empowered their interest and exploration of these butterflies, but in fact it allowed them to go deeper and further into their understanding. What we're doing right now is we're exploring our garden. It turns out that gardens change in the fall. What do you notice? Well, one thing that they're noticing here is as we bring things inside, they're getting brown, they're starting to die, they're getting mushy, they're getting yucky. Some of the technical terms that have been used. And so the provocation was, what do you notice about garden plants in the fall? And one of the amazing things that they noticed was not about the plants themselves at all, but in fact, these plants were harboring some animal life. And the animals would drop out of the moss and the other, or again, it's moist there. And so the moss that we have is replete with water. And so from these pieces that were sitting on the table here, you can see some of the moss, things would emerge after a short period of time. And so what came out was this snail. Look at the snail on the screen. Now, that's a pretty good sized snail, except that it's not. Envision the size of a dime. Okay, that's the dime. And that's the snail that we're looking at, compared to the size of a dime. A tiny, tiny little snail embedded in here. And as Drew said, when you see him in real life, he's really slow, but under the microscope, he's turbo snail. Do you recognize this? Kids just play with these all day long. It's a roly-poly. This roly-poly, however, has a dark side. This is what the roly-poly looks like under this new microscope. You can see his compound eyes. Oops, I'm going to go back, sorry. See if I can go back here. And one more time, sorry about that. Look at his compound eyes there. You can also see the hair follicles on his antenna. This was really amazing. So the investigation of this roly-poly just brought everyone in the classroom over. Ooh, oh! And many, many photographs were taken. The poor guy was under the light for quite some time. Okay, so going back to some of the other inspection of the plants, in what ways does the surface of a leaf look the same or different from the surface of your skin? And as one of the students said, you can't really see the designs of the leaves without the microscope. And oh, that looks just like my skin. Here was one that emerged, and I'll show you in a moment from when it emerged. Two pictures. Can you tell what they are? Well, on the left are flower buds, and of course on the right are taste buds. Taste buds. You. How about this one? This one I was not expecting. This was done by our little scientist. That's just a leaf, just a microscopic picture of a leaf, and Mark's lips. Okay. Where did this emerge from? It emerged from doctors. In the preschool classroom, the 3- and 4-year-olds are exploring their bodies, learning what it means to be a doctor. And so you'll see, not only here are there doctors in their lab coats, I don't know if you can see, there's a diagram of an individual, and they're taking doctor's notes and circling the parts that need closer inspection. They're taking apart a model and looking at the light table at actual x-rays of individuals. And so in the doctor's office, there is the need to explore more deeply. And so you can see people are using the laptop here to explore what the skin looks like, and the doctor and her stethoscope is looking closely at the cheek of an individual. And what they ended up finding is, ooh, there are little boo-boos and owies and scratches and things that really are quite impressive. And you can see here, she's got the hand circled. It needs further examination. And apparently it's clear why the doctor's notes are suitably scribbled, so we've done well in helping do that authentically. And so, yes, they explored every manner of organ and orifice, but let me have you tell them in their own words. Listen closely.
Oh, it's on my ear hole.
me introduce you to a young girl that I'll refer to as her initial L. Elle came into the school, and one day she said, I went to the doctor's yesterday, and I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear you were sick. She said, I wasn't sick. This is the tick that sucked my blood. And I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. And so then her mother, she talked to me, and her mother sent me some photographs, and she'd been to the doctors to have the tick removed. It was not a pleasant process, and so this in fact is a photograph that her mother gave me of her doctor at the hospital, and she had on just to the side of her sternum, she had a tick, and there's the tick embedded in her. And this was not a pleasant experience. But she brought it to school the next day, and the teacher, hearing Elle's voice and the emotion in her words, encouraged her to put the tick under the microscope, obviously to explore it more deeply, empower her to feel a different relationship with this tick than a bloodsucker, I guess. And so this is the photograph that she took of that tick. You can see, in fact, it still has some of her blood in it. And this is the tick that sucked my blood as her statement. And so she drew that tick. And she wrote about that tick. And she owned that tick. And the dynamic of that relationship now changed. And so subsequently, she went back, and you can see there's a little bit of a red spot there, but mostly the spot is healed where the tick was, and she's worked her way through it, processed it, and in fact, on reflection, she, oh, let me.
That's blood.
And what's that picture at the bottom? How could you see?
I used the microscope, and after nuisance, I used this.
Now watch your face or expression.
Did you use the microscope to show the tick to your friends? What did they think of it?
It was impressive, and she became the hot item of the day in the sense that everyone wanted to see the tick and explore what was going on. You can see how it empowered her, changed the nature of that experience, and she now owns that tick. Microscopes are the quintessential early childhood tool. They're effective in supporting wondering, extending authentic learning, empowering exploration. They're inherently motivating. The only drawback is that they're a little expensive, but they cost about the same or less than an iPad, and one or more in a school can really make a significant difference in children's ability to explore. I also want to briefly talk a little bit about tablets. Pappert's children's machine. They are really a good tool for access, for creation, for presentation of lots of content. And so during the investigations that you saw, the students were able to take a look at the body through body walk or human body. A number of kids wanted to explore their eyes more deeply, and Bobo Explores Light is a good tool for that. As we were studying moths and butterflies, the Audubon Guide was great. And so there's many digital tools that can be used. Here's the Story Kit, Book Creator. These are ways in which your stories can be told once you're done with some of the learning or as a means of assisting them. So children construct the stories that emerge from that. So handheld computing can be a wonderfully versatile tool with a variety of software, and you can see one of the children just randomly in Center Time one day did this Play-Doh version of an iPad. Lauren, I'm hoping you're going to review these apps at some point. As you can see, there are good ones there. There are many other tools that are on the iPad and that are interesting and innovative, some of which are elementary coding tools, augmented reality, some of the ones that Warren and others have presented in previous years. Right now, one of the hot new things is three-dimensional tools, and so you have everything from this 3D printer, use an iPad, create something and print it three-dimensionally, or robotic controls. But none of these really empower. I have not found that these really empower children to go deeply into things that are right now very meaningful for them. And so, you know, I may come back in subsequent years and tell you tales of them, but for now I just want to give you the foreshadowing of this is what's on the horizon. Instead, I want to take you back to my classroom, and I would like to present and finish a story that I started last year. So this is Luke. This is a transformative story of the power of technology. Last year, Luke was a kindergartner in my school, and this is a picture of him on the second day of school when he built a Lego structure of a ship and a cluster of white bricks, and he talked passionately about the Titanic. Most of these photos that follow were simply taken as part of the documentation of all the children in the classroom, and it was only a little bit later that one of the teachers pulled me aside and said, "There's an interesting thing going on. Do you want to come and collaborate with us on this?" So the teachers and I listened the next day as he asked the teacher to draw a picture of the Titanic, and the teacher, of course, said, "Well, no, but I'd be glad to help you draw one, Luke." And he said, Essentially, I don't draw. I don't hold a pencil. I can't do that well. She said, "Well, how might be another way?" And so what he did is he built it out of Legos and traced it. So you can see his picture there of the Titanic. And it was obvious his small motor skills were not great, and so that was one of the things that needed to be worked on. And the work Luke did was almost always in solitary play, and so he explored Play-Doh, he explored clay, and each time he seemed to put together these characteristic 4 stacks of the Titanic. He did lots of Lego play. So he built the Titanic and, you know, the Britannic sister ship and the Titanic and again the Titanic, and we thought, oh, there might be a pattern. But he was pretty amazing.
Oh, wow.
Notice the lack of other children around him. He was really working diligently, but sometimes, rarely, in parallel play, mostly in solitary play. And he would use magnetic blocks. And he would build the Titanic. And we'd say, let's go into the atelier and do some art. And he'd say, great. And notice, I think it was Kathy who says, go big or go home. He liked to go big. And so there was the thought of how can we empower his work? And so I found a CD-ROM and a book that was simply $25. And what it did is it opened up the world to Luke. It opened up the world of the Titanic, and it put him on the deck. It put him in the lifeboats. So that question of how do we empower him and allow him to explore deeply was answered with this tool. And he wanted to show his parents, his family members. He spent a lot of time with me exploring this. And in the process, had stories to tell, but he still wasn't comfortable writing them, so one of those tools that I was showing you, Doodlecast, was a tool he used to tell the story by drawing and speaking.
This is like when it's filled with water in the bottom of the whole plate.
And more of this is posted online, so I encourage you to go there and take a look at all of this. Here's a look outside. Creative play.
Iceberg, body heads, from out of food. Horse stumble. Iceberg, surfing. Come on. Turn.
If you want to find out how that turns out. So then I sat down with him and said, can you go ahead and try and draw this? And so now he was comfortable attempting to draw, and so there's the picture that he drew of the Titanic. And on the website, you can hear him describe the different elements that are there.
Flag.
Mm-hmm.
Here the cat rooms and furnaces.
Lots of furnaces. He wants this to be a powerful ship. So over the course of the next few weeks, we watched him play, and one of the things that was encouraging is I thought, oh my, now he's playing with gears and creating things out of paper. That's nice. He's kind of moved a little bit beyond. Gears that will pump the water out of the hull, a mop to swab the deck. He was really focused on this, but literacy was still a challenge. And then we found, actually a teacher found an interesting story telling the story of the Titanic. And this story was one that was posted online because they were selling this letter, auctioning it online. And so Luke's teacher had seen this and brought it in front of the group. Esther Hart had written this letter while on the ship and left a space at the bottom for her daughter Eva to add her own salutation. Eva was 7. As the ship was going down, Eva's father offered his wife the fur coat he was wearing so she could stay warm on the lifeboat, and safely tucked into the pocket of that coat was the letter they had written together. Eva and her mother were safely rescued by the Carpathia, and Benjamin, Dad, went down with the ship. So the teachers designed a center to explore writing in the context of what would you write if you were sending a letter, not necessarily in the context of on a sinking ship. But this now fascinated Luke, and he was ready to write. And so he started writing up a storm, and you can see some of the various things that he was writing, always within the context of, again, the Titanic. So let's quickly revisit his work on the second day. There it is on the second month, and this is the 8th month. That's right, he extended this over the course of the entire year, and this is Luke's grand liner. Luke's grand liner has 3 layers here. There's glassing layer at the top, that's the deck, and then midship, and then, actually that's not the right term, the steerage maybe, and then the bottom of the ship. And Luke is, well, let's have him tell.
I'm gonna give the firemen each a break for like 2 minutes. So, because they're really hot down there. Too hot, they would need lots of water. Plus there's a water machine I'm gonna add down there.
So
can you describe again some of the elements that are down in your lower deck?
The elements of the ship here.
I see you have some writing on the bottom here.
Yeah.
Here's how big this model is. He worked for weeks on this.
And I used the teacher pen for them.
Can you tell me what it says?
And he got to use the teacher pen. So you see the use of manipulatives and CD-ROM and other materials. This was a successful learning experience because first and foremost, the teachers listened to all the languages that Luke was using. He was provided with a range of media across which he explored and represented his ideas. There was careful and intentional selection of the digital materials that empowered new ways of learning for him. Materials that were transformative for him, allowing him to go deep into the concepts that he was exploring. The results were conceptual. You notice the empathy he has for the people down. If you go to the videos that I have online, he describes we don't want the people down on the steerage to feel like they are rats, so there's lots of lines letting them know where to go in case there's an accident. He had thoroughly on his liner learned from the problems of the Titanic and designed a ship that would be safe and comfortable for everyone, including a grand piano, rotating chairs, a pool, a chapel, all kinds of things built into it. You have to hear him describe it. Listen to what students are telling you about what's important in their lives. Use learning tools that empower them and encourage deep explorations in a manner that supports their needs as children and as students. Utilize the guidance of the position statement and the great resources available to you throughout the field to learn all you can. In the end, I will remind you that teachers should never focus on the seductive new technologies, but instead on the high-quality opportunities to support learning of all kinds. And so let's continue to work together as a field to envision, advocate for, and create innovative learning environments that can inspire young children and that can change the world, one child, one classroom, one one community at a time. Thank you.
All right. It's always hard to follow Mark because he's got such interesting and exciting stories to share. I am excited to be here, and I have to add just a little bit of note to what Bonnie said. I'm Diane Bales. I am a faculty member and extension specialist at the University of Georgia, and I became part of this team 2 years after they started presenting because I came up to them after a presentation just like this, started up a conversation, and a couple weeks later got an email saying, hey, you want to present with us next year? So, so I want to encourage you to not just to come talk to us, but certainly to explore connections with other people in conferences, because you never know what might come of this.
You have to have a B in your name.
But you do have to have a B in your name, that's right. In fact, I got married this year, and they're all happy that I didn't change my name because I wouldn't have been a B anymore, and then we would have had problems.
It was a requirement.
It was a requirement, that's right. They stated this was a requirement. So, anyway, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about a project that I have been working with a particular preschool class and preschool teacher on, and I'm bringing together several years worth of different explorations of storytelling using different apps and different pieces with iPads in particular. And so, just to frame what we have been doing, I have been working with a teacher in a mixed-age preschool classroom at the Child Development Lab on the campus at the University of Georgia. And this collaboration has been going on for 3 or 4 years now. It works well because we both have an interest in intentional and appropriate uses of technology, and because he is an extremely experienced, flexible, and creative teacher, and who understands the potential of technology, but also understands its role in the ongoing learning of children. So we're not just forcing, as Mark said, we're not just forcing technology on children because it's a nifty new tool. He is particularly skilled in using this in very appropriate and thoughtful and intentional ways. We've also worked hard to have the families involved and invested in children's technology use. And we're very fortunate to have a group of children who come from families who mostly start with an understanding that technology can be a useful learning tool if it's used appropriately. But we do also make sure to be very intentional in terms of how we involve them. And this whole project has been an ongoing collaboration among the faculty member, me, the teacher, and the children. And I continue to be amazed at how much I learn from them and how much my thinking about integrating and using technology has changed in observing what they do, what they don't do, and how things tend to be effective. Good. I'm always excited when the slides advance. And so the focus over the last several years has primarily been on storytelling, using iPads in the preschool classroom to practice meaningful storytelling through child-guided use of these tools. And so we have used blogging to tell stories about what's going on in the classroom and to use that as a two-way communication tool with families and others outside the classroom. We have shared family stories using various iPad apps and use that as a building of classroom community as well as a literacy activity. And then my most recent exploration with this teacher and these children has been organized storytelling through coding using a particular iPad app that I'm going to talk about in just a second. So very quickly, the classroom blogging project, this Classroom 123 has a blog that they use as a tool to communicate some of the things they're doing. And this is actually a fairly old blog post from last year. Any of you who know SEC sports know that when SEC teams play, sometimes ESPN College Game Day comes to visit your campus. And so last fall, we had the opportunity for game day to come to campus. And so the children in the lab school went down to the set of game day on Friday as it was being set up. It was a couple of blocks from the lab school. And they wrote a blog post talking about their experiences. Today we went to the ESPN game day. We saw a forklift and a golf cart in different classes. We saw the babies, Miss Elaine's class, the younger toddlers, Anna's baby brother was asleep. So they go on and they describe their experiences seeing ESPN Game Day being set up. And this became, and all of the various threads on this blog have become conversation tools because families comment. I make the intentional effort to go in and comment and share. In this particular blog post, they talk about going and seeing an elevator with windows in it. And so the comment that I posted was, wow, where is that elevator with windows? I need to ride on it. They sent me back a comment saying, describing where it was and asking me to tell them about my experiences when I went and rode on the elevator. So of course I had to go ride on the elevator so that I could write back and tell them about my experiences. So it's been a good exploration in sharing and writing. This class primarily were 3-year-olds when they started doing this. And so a lot of this is dictation to the teacher, but the posts very much read like 3-year-old dictation. He does not try to edit them and make them sound more adult. He's actually using it and using the language that they use and expressing it in exactly the way that they express it. So it's been one tool to tell stories that's been very effective. Another piece that we have done is guided family storytelling. This grew out of a need to connect some new students in the class to the rest of the classroom community. And so in this classroom, the teachers make regular home visits. And so with one particular family, the teacher took the iPad with him when he went on the home visit. And part of what they did, he and the child and the family, was to take photos of the family, of the home, of the child's bedroom, and so on. And then during over the next several days in the classroom, as the little boy was interested, they organized this into a story. So the child was able to select photos from the ones they'd taken, arrange them, narrate them, explain them, and so on. And then the child had the opportunity to share the family's story with other children during large group so that they could see the photos and hear and see the narration of the story. And we've done versions of this using 2 different apps. One is VoiceThread, one is StoryKit. There are many, many others, as Mark referred to, in terms of creating stories. And in this particular example, what made this a meaningful experience, this little boy was from a Chinese-speaking family and spoke very little English. And I've told this story before, but it's worth re-emphasizing. He spoke very little English, and he had had some problems, and the other children had been treating him as if he was a much younger child. So they weren't ignoring him, but they were not really connecting with him and including him in play and so on because of the language difference and because they sort of assumed that he didn't understand what was going on. This one story that he created about his family opened so many doors for this child because children were able to see he lives in a house that looks a lot like mine. He eats these kinds of foods. He and his parents like to play just like my family and I like to play. Even though some of the narration was actually recorded in Chinese, this opened a conversation with the children as well about, well, why is he speaking using these sounds that we don't understand, and which began a conversation about multiple languages and language development. Within a couple of weeks, this child was much more connected to his peers. They were playing. Of course, his English language learning took off from there because he was having very authentic conversations with other children, but this being able to share this story and to be able to show children and for him to show children that there were some powerful ways that he was very much like them really built this classroom community. So it was a useful way to integrate this new child into the classroom community, to help children see similarities among their families. And it did encourage the social development as well as the language development of a child who is a dual language learner. And the other thing that was very effective for this child was that he was practicing story organization. He was selecting photos, putting them together in a meaningful way, narrating them, explaining them, all of these are the cognitive processes that are needed for storytelling. And so he was practicing not only English language, but general literacy skills by using this project. The project that we have been working on this year, and it's sort of a natural extension of the projects that we have done in the past, is another attempt at organized storytelling. And in this case, we're using a platform called Scratch Junior. It's one of several relatively new coding types of programs that have been developed that are usable by young children. And in this case, our goal as we went into Philip, the teachers, and my goal as we went into this project was to help children organize their ideas into structured stories and to take those ideas and implement them. What you can do with Scratch Junior is you use blocks to animate different characters, and you can set up different settings and so on. But the children have to put the blocks together in organized, structured ways in order to make the characters do the things that they want to do. So rather than just start with, here's a tool, let's play with it, we talked about stories, and we began with some activities to make the tool meaningful and to make it concrete. So we started with a game. The teacher, Philip, is in a wheelchair right now. He's had back surgery. And so we said, okay, we're going to send Mr. Philip over to the classroom door. How is he going to get there? And I was asking this question. They said, okay, well, roll that way. And so, of course, he rolls one little teeny tiny little roll that way. And we stop and say, okay, what happened? He didn't get there, did he? Okay, we need to be more specific, okay? And one child came up with, he needs to go 6 rolls. And so, of course, he does 6 very, very small rolls, and we stop and assess, did that get him to the door? Not quite. Okay, how many more rolls do we think we need to tell him to go? So they were practicing this logic of putting together very meaningful, concrete instructions for their teacher to achieve a goal, so that they could then take that and translate it to the tool when we pulled out the iPads. We also did some practice with the symbols. I have copied and pasted some of the blocks that you use in this program down at the bottom so that you can see them. The flag is an indicator to start a sequence of code. The others are all directions, forward, back, up, down, spinning around and jumping up and down. And then the red block is an indication of an end of a sequence of code. So we practiced these, we held them up, we played, Simon Says, kind of a game where one child would hold up the card and go like this, and we'd have everybody else take 2 steps forward or 2 steps to the left or whatever was appropriate to familiarize them with the tool. And then we played a prediction game. I had worked with this program a little bit and created a couple of examples. And in this case, what they saw first, these are just screenshots, but what they saw first was just the image on the left. And I asked them to predict, what do you think is going to happen if you tap the red car? And I had set it up so that the red car goes forward, I believe it was 5 or 6 paces forward, and it bumps the purple car, and then the purple car goes a certain number of steps forward. So we had them predict how far it went and those kinds of things. So again, they were familiar with the kinds of things you could do with the interface before we ever actually had them actually using it and coding it. So I'm gonna let me quickly show you an example here. I'm going to swap and hope that this works well. Excellent, fantastic. So we started out then by exploring the interface and having them try to figure out what they could do. The cat character that you see here is the default character. When you create a story, this is the character that shows up. So the first thing they wanted to do was see what they could make the cat do. And after quite a bit of negotiation and working together, this is what they came up with, which they thought was absolutely the funniest thing ever that they had created. And in fact, was memorable enough that they wanted to go back and watch this story several different times. So. and I think this will continue to cycle until I stop it. But they worked for probably 10 or 15 minutes to figure out how many rotations does it take to turn this cat on his head and then make him bounce up and down. And you can see at the bottom here kind of how the coding works. Those are the blocks that you drag and drop and connect to guide the program and to guide the character in what it's doing. So just from exploring the interface, they were able to come up with these kinds of insights into how the program itself worked. Look at that. They also discovered pretty quickly that you can change characters. They have animals, they have balls, they have the world, they have people, and so on. And so they spent quite a lot of time on developing characters. Here's another example of the problem solving that they used to try and come up with how to make this cat jump on its head. What was most interesting, and you can kind of see this in the photo on the left, this was all being done in teamwork and in collaboration. So we've got one child sitting right here and another child reaching over trying to make the adjustments to the blocks. And so they're collaborating and trying to making decisions about how to make this interface do what they wanted it to do. What was more interesting and what surprised me the most was as we started really talking about how can you tell a story with this app and with this tool, what they were most interested in starting with was character development. So they wanted to create their own individual stories or team stories with different characters for all of them. But they were very thoughtful about selecting what characters they wanted, customizing the colors. This particular piece of the interface allows them to change colors and so on. And we explored a little bit and discovered that we could take a photo with the iPad and actually add their faces to these characters. And so over the course of several days, they kept coming back and thinking, you know, I made my character's suit, spacesuit purple, but I really think I'd rather have it be blue. And so they made multiple adjustments back and forth to the characters. And throughout all of this process, this was child-led, child-directed types of exploration. The adults' roles, we did some intentional planning, of course, for how to introduce this. We co-explored the features more than once. They asked me, can we do this with our characters? And I had to honestly say, I don't know, let's find out. And so we did a lot of exploring, a lot of dragging and dropping blocks, finding out, tapping the block, finding out, does this do what you want it to do? And they discovered some things that I had no idea about. The other thing that Philip and I were doing were asking questions. When they came to us and said, you know, how do I do this? A lot of times the answer was, I don't know, let's find out. Or what do you think would happen if we... one of my favorite problem-solving examples in another of the scenarios that I didn't show you, the child was trying to make the giraffe turn a certain amount and then basically go running on its side to the side of the picture. And so we had to guess, how many turns do you think it will take to turn the giraffe? Well, 1, so we tried 1. Okay, it's going to take 18, and of course 18 spins it around 3 or 4 times. So, you know, we were narrowing down problem solving until they found the right number. Capitalizing on children's interest. I honestly, when we went into this project, did not expect to spend quite so much time on character development. Over the course of several sessions, we probably put in, each child probably put in 15 or 20 minutes on developing and refining and changing their own characters. And then the next step is has been encouraging storyline development. So I'm going to show you a photo, I think. Yeah. This is one set of characters that 3 little boys came up with. And I have left them with the charge that before the next time that I come back to work with them on this, they need to be thinking about what story can we tell with these characters. They are astronauts, they're on the moon. What do you want to happen to them? And one little boy in particular has had his eyes really light up and has really said, I don't know, but I'm going to think about it before next week and come up with what do we want this story to do. So we've had a lot of success And some of the skills that we've observed, using imagination. These children, I thought they would focus on things that were very familiar. There is the ability within this app to take photos of their environment and create stories and animation around things that are familiar to them. I showed them an example that I developed. They weren't very interested in it. They wanted to go into space. They wanted to be astronauts. And so they chose an unfamiliar setting for their story. They were very careful, thoughtful in planning their characters that best represented themselves. We're practicing sequencing skills, putting the steps in order to make the characters do the things they want. Problem solving, breaking the goals down into steps. And then some spontaneous narration. This child named this particular event the trip to the moon. Even though we have 2 astronauts, a moon, and a cowboy, this was the trip to the moon. And we worked until we figured out how can we actually put that narration on that page. So, and then one of the things that was really valuable, and has been and continues to be really valuable, is the collaborations that they are building. They are turning to each other for help and showing each other and demonstrating as they're trying to figure out some of the steps to follow. So the next steps for the astronaut characters, which is kind of where these particular 3 boys and I have wound up, is to work on some intentional storytelling, not just using this app, but also using other media. So I'm going to go back in and we're going to act out the stories they've been thinking of first. Before we ever pull the iPad out, we're going to act them out and do some talking about the storyline. Having them write and illustrate the stories, and then also using the app as yet another tool to be able to tell their stories. And then we have some plans to share the stories with other children in the class. We do have some other children who have been interested in this, and so my hope over time is to help these 3 young men to be peer mentors, helping teach other children how to use this particular app. So it's an ongoing process. I'm learning with them. We're also running up against some of the limitations of Scratch Junior. Warren and I were talking about some of them before we started. And there may be other platforms and other apps that may also be as effective or more effective in some of what these children want to do.
Just really quickly, do you have a number of tablets in the classroom or just 1 or 2?
This particular project we've been using 2, but they wind up, these 3 boys have wound up focusing all on the same one. And I've been trying to do this in small groups because it's too challenging to have too many at the same time, but they've wound up all focusing and working together on that same tablet. So, very quickly, I appreciate the opportunity to share this. I do need to acknowledge Philip Baumgartner, who is the teacher that I've been working with on all of this. Without his help, this would not be possible. So, we're going to shift and let Bonnie talk about that.
Some slides that I go past very quickly. There's a lot of information up on the website for Comienza en Casa. I'm going to talk about the art of learning in a digital age, where I want to discuss stories that talk about increasing access, building relationships, and looking at new tools. My name is Bonnie Blagojevic. I'm an education consultant in Maine. And the program that I want to talk most about is called Comienza en Casa. It starts at home, that serves 4 to 6 families in Millbridge, Maine, a small rural coastal community. Families speak Spanish in the home, do seasonal agricultural farm work, and have pre-K or kindergarten-age children eligible for Maine Migrant Education Services. During the program, families use iPads as a tool for learning at home, along with more traditional kindergarten readiness activities. The program continues to evolve based on feedback from families. We have 3 hours per month direct time scheduled with families, during an evening group meeting once a month and a mid-month home visit. For the monthly unit, we identify learning goals and offer a set of on- and off-screen activity options for families. We include the types of activities we know are important for young children and can help them to meet those goals, opportunities to read, play, create, and use free play apps on the iPad, as well as to participate in off-screen, including outdoor learning activities. Each unit we offer reading options, taking into consideration feedback from families about reading preferences and challenges, such as access to good stories in Spanish, at home or at the library, varying literacy and comfort levels with reading and reading strategies. For example, in the physical science unit, we offer 2 ebook versions of The Three Little Pigs, one with an audio narration option in Spanish, providing access to the storyline and vocabulary for children, and also a second version only available in English, but with different visual and interactive opportunities to view together and discuss. Parents help their child predict and experiment with the physical qualities of objects after viewing a video model of an activity called Blow Your House Down, which relates to this story. One family decided to retell the story together using drawings the child had done and props. The father and son performed the story of The Three Little Pigs, and the mother videotaped it. Everybody in the family was involved. Children in the program really enjoyed The Three Little Pigs story, and they wanted to perform this at a local event, which they did with help from their parents and an AmeriCorps member. Community partnerships are really important to help increase access to early learning and reading opportunities in the community. The Millbridge kindergarten teacher, Susan Polkassis, modeled expressive story reading, which we videotaped using an iPhone, edited with iMovie, and was able to place on the program iPads for home viewing. A mini grant from the University of Maine was used to purchase iPads and ebooks, educational apps, picture books in Spanish, and puzzles for use and enjoyment at the Millbridge Public Library by the whole community. We offered a bilingual story reading of the book, Not a Box, in which the bunny says, it's not a box, it's a spaceship. It's not a box, it's something else, at our evening meeting, and every family was given a cardboard box for use at home. A Spanish version of the book was purchased for the library. One family created a multimedia version of the book, My Perfect Box, using the Book Creator app, with the child and father acting out their story ideas and the mother videotaping. The child could draw on and personalize the book. It was something they all did together and enjoyed. Here's a little bit from that clip. Parents want their child to succeed, but they may not know what's going to help their child's language development, reading, math, etc. in school, because they may not have had opportunities themselves that give them that knowledge base. So they really appreciate more information about what their child will learn in school and how to help them. As the program continued with discussions about child development, parents used the iPad to record observations of their children. One mother hid behind a corner where her child couldn't see her and videotaped his problem-solving and persistence as he tried to place 2 coolers, a chair, and several objects into a small space in between the refrigerator and the stove. When parents use educational apps with their children, sometimes they become more aware of what the children has mastered or what they might want to need spend more time with, such as a parent who's using the Shapes game with her son and realized he hadn't really learned that yet. When and how do we use technology? Some programs share favorite apps and websites using web tools like Symbaloo or descriptions via class blogs, as others have mentioned. Resources such as the Fred Rogers Center blog have posts with information that can inform and enrich these conversations. When searching for accessible resources for families, we take into consideration factors such as availability in Spanish and how information is presented, keeping in mind many of the families don't have internet and or reliable phone access. Feedback led us to realize that tip sheets were not an effective means of communicating with families, but short video models were. This past spring, through a partnership with Ready Rosie, we were able to pilot the offline use of their video clips available in English and Spanish. Each unit, we would give out 8 to 10 2-minute video clips modeling activities on the iPads that families could use to do in the home, aligned with our unit goals and spring science studies. Parents started doing experiments, a lot more experiments, at home. Parents told us they really loved the video models because they were short, they happened in everyday places. It showed you how to do it. You don't have to figure out how to do it. And the vocabulary was provided. There's a word bank that might say predict, sync, float, and that was helpful for them. And the children would watch and get inspired and want to do the activities. During an interview, one of the parents commented, "I really had no idea how to do any of this with my older child. I didn't do anything like this, but now I can. I have the ideas and above all, the tools, the videos." And there was a lot of science, experiment, inquiry, discussion. And in this case, this was a few photos from a child, and he really enjoyed growing and eating fresh peas last summer. And it was winter, and he said to his mom, "I want to grow the canned peas." So they had an experience where they tried to grow the canned peas outside, and his text read, "Peas, I want to plant them, but I don't see that they were growing." And they used Book Creator and started to make a book about their observations. After the final unit in the spring, Anna, the home visitor in the program, noticed a video of a mother clipping her son's toenails. Anna said, "I had no idea what the connection was going to be, but once I started listening to the audio, I realized she was having rich conversation with her son and asked him if he thought his toenails grew, why? Were they living? What did they need to grow?" All things that tie back to our unit topic. Over time, the mother had gone from more or less following the script of the off-screen activities and the Ready Rosie videos to developing a deeper understanding of how to help the child learn, engaging her son in language-rich conversation. When families in the program told us they were not familiar with the concept of recycling, where and when and how to do it, one of the parents in the program, working as an AmeriCorps volunteer, used the app Shadow Puppet to create a multimedia explanation, which was placed on all the iPads for home viewing. There are other great examples. Colorado Department of Ed has the Results Matter video library, and I'm not going to go into that, but you can look all these things up on the wiki, as well as there was a story of a teacher who uses QR codes and has her children and class every week talk about what they're doing and why, and those are uploaded and families just scan a code at home and they get a report from their child on what they've been doing. So some of those will be on our wiki page. You can check into that later. One of the children in the program is now in kindergarten. He went on a class trip to a wild blueberry farm and came home and told his mother he needed to create a book about his experience, which he did using the Shadow Puppet app. His mother shared the link and the story with us, and it then was shared with the kindergarten teacher. The kindergarten teacher had learned how to use the Shadow Puppet from one of the parents in the program. After hearing about the berry story that this child had done, the kindergarten teacher decided to set up a writing center in her classroom so other children could make Shadow Puppet stories about their experience. Our collaborations are supporting and enriching expanded digital literacy opportunities for young children in the community.
How berries go. It said by Jane was used that the first thing you need a seed. Then you need a hot sun. Then you water the seed. Then the seed grows more, bigger, and is ready to eat.
New tools are constantly being developed, and here are a couple we're going to explore, and we'll have to continue that story next year. In addition to exchanging ideas locally in Maine, there are online communities and social networking opportunities. We mentioned the Interest Forum, and I hope you'll keep in touch with us. One example of the information I posted recently to our Technology Interest Forum Devo group, where we share websites, was something I came across and was really interested in about a teacher in Indonesia who was making bilingual books with children. And the books that the children made are all available for free online, and you'll see the links in the wiki. And there's also a series of short multimedia books called One Best Thing, where this teacher explains her process of making this bilingual book in this rural, remote village in northern Sumatra. And the books are beautiful, and they're also a model that inspired us to make some bilingual books back in Maine, which is exciting because sometimes there's just not enough good material out there. Why can't we make our own? I think we should give Warren a turn, don't you?
What do you see? This is the original, this is slide 1 of the original Rorschach test. So this has been tested statistically so we can find out how many of you see what you see. I can test this audience.
Why are my parents fighting?
All right, let's talk about that. See me after the session. It's bar. That's therapy. So 53% of you, now how many of you saw a bat? Raise your hand. And how many of you saw a butterfly? Raise your hand. So 53% of Rorschach people saw a bat, and 29% saw a butterfly, and then 1% saw their parents fighting. I'd like to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to the 21st century Rorschach test. Are you ready? Please study the screen because you're about to see it. There it is. My point is that some of you see flashcards, some of you see an easel where you can finger paint, some of you see a camera, a recording device, some of you see a headache, some of you see an opportunity. What this is depends on the app and the application. And it's guided by the continual pendulum that goes back and forth between constructivism and behaviorism and whole language and phonics and so on. And it will continue that way, and that's part of our business. So we have to deal with it. Neither and both are correct. Well, we have good news. After all the years of us working together, we're starting to get to the point where you just never know what's going to happen. Where stuff kind of works, and where we start to have the devices that we want. This is more a complete, so this device is depends on the app. So I'd like to also put this out for the first time, and that is that an app is a cultural artifact. Start viewing an app as a man-made object, which means that every app has bias that you may or may not like. Every app has an interaction style, just like a teacher and a child. Some of you will like it, some of you won't like it, and we each learn that from our own past. It has ethnic bias, and it has gender bias, because it's made by people, it's made by humans. And it's somebody's idea of best practice. And I put this out because I'm a reviewer, and I look at a lot of different kinds of bias. So, we're starting to get to a point that's very exciting. The conversation about technology is starting to change from screen time is good or bad to it's app time, and every app is different. And I think what you're picking up here is that, as Mark said, these are tools. This is healthy evolution of the field. And I have a chapter in Chip's book where I explore the question, what would Maria Montessori say about the iPad? And it's a question that I worked on for about 5 years. And after reading a lot of what Montessori, her original writings, I think that she'd be very excited by the technology, but she'd also be horrified by some of the apps that have her name on it. But I think that this is a great exercise to play, because every theorist would have a view of this Rorschach test. And it's our job to use the good stuff. Use it to support our own theories. You know how everyone's got the 3 words? You know, the 3 C's, or everyone's got, you should have your own 3 letters and develop that lens. All right, so let's move along here. And go into show and tell, the B's 14th edition.
Be afraid.
Be very afraid. You probably are starting to learn that we do this for our own benefit. It's our way of kind of what's new and so on. So you guys are just kind of invited for a party, a little micro party. I'm Warren Buckleitner. My hashtag is Bucklight, if you'd like to. And I'm editor of Children's Technology Review, and I'm really excited after 20 plus years of reviewing software to finally announce C-Trex, which is coming out next week. It's our database in Google form. And it's our way, and it's one approach, and I'm a constructivist, so I'm biased, but it's my approach, our approach, of what is good practice and what is bad practice. And we actually try to quantify it. And it's all a big mind game. It's a test to see how well we can focus our opinion around a certain product. This year has been extremely exciting. There's been so many amazing products to talk about. So let's just explore some of those. This is coming next month. This is our mascot, the Picky Teacher. And it's going to be at pickyteacher.com, so it's easy to remember. And it's subscription supported, so that's how we monetize it. So there's no affiliate links, there's no advertising, and there's no gimmicks. And it's the least worst review approach out there. And I'm the first to admit that there's no perfect system. But what I'm really excited about is the exchange part of C-Tracks. It's CTR, Children's Technology Review. For the first time now we have EX, which is we want your opinion and we want the publisher's opinion so that you can respond to our review and tell us if it's good or bad. And that's what it looks like. And it works right now. So what else is new? I'm just back from Amsterdam. This fall there's going to be 3 brands of 3D virtual reality goggles that you can buy for about $350. Oculus Rift 2 was just purchased by Zuckerberg and Facebook. Have a look. Oh, I need the sound. Here we go. I think I'm going to need the sound. Here we go. So we plan glitches, of course. Okay. Do I know what's going on with that? Yeah, it's weird. All right, so this is a flying device that you can strap a kid into. There's a fan right in front. That's called haptic feedback. And you can actually fly. And you can tilt your hands, and those are your wings. So the thing I thought about is it helps the child feel like a superhuman. So you can, we've all dreamed of flying. This is the first time you can actually see what it looks like. You probably heard about last month. There's a new, oh, there it goes.
Only use the visual board and the audio board, also like haptic feedbacks and motion feedback. I'm David Troxler. I'm a master student at the University of the Arts in Zurich, and we worked on this project. It's actually a research project from our university. We also try to implement all of Victoria's now.
So the haptic feedback is the fan, and there's a vibration as well?
There's also vibration, but we didn't actually try to improve that. So we are still in the research development, so we're trying to think.
This is what I want the technology exploration room at NAEYC to look like next year. I think we should take the best products from all the universities and have them here so we can play with them, because I think each of you need to jump in that machine and fly a little bit. So, all right, so Oculus is coming. There's a lot of interesting things coming. Another thing, you probably heard about the iPad Air 2. And it's kind of fun to look at the, Apple always calls it the thinnest, most powerful iPad ever. So I went back and looked at the press releases for the last 3 versions of the iPad. And here are the headlines. In March 11th, in 2011, all new design is thinner, lighter, faster. October 13th, Apple announces iPad Air, dramatically thinner, lighter, more powerful. And then, of course, Apple enters iPad Air 2, the thinnest, most powerful. Folks, how thin do we need to go? The point is that we're here. We've got our device. We've got the device we always dreamed of in the 80s. We can give these to every child. Now, what's exciting is, I've got the Kindle Fire right there, it's $100. The little Scholar from School Zone is $150. These are just a fraction of, they've come down in cost so much. Now we can start to shift the conversation to, these are all the ones I'm going to be reviewing this fall, to how do we reach the rest of the world? How do we get this? We always worry about food, diseases, mosquito nets, and I think apps. We need to start getting these. I think Negroponte's idea of one laptop per child was right. It's time to start reaching out and getting, not just in developing countries, but in my town in Michigan. And I want to show you a project that I'm working on. This is in our library, our public library. We call this the Tablet Buffet. Any child can come in and pick up a tablet, all different varieties. They can go online and they can experience and feel like a superhuman. We want every kid to feel like a superhuman. This is one day I heard screaming, so I went up and I had to see what was happening. And I saw children, this is a Wii U playing Luigi's Ghost Mansion.
This is actually Luigi's Mansion in Nintendo Land. And basically the whole point is that whoever has the gamepad over there is playing the ghost.
Wait, is that him?
Yeah.
This is the ghost?
See who the ghost is?
Yeah.
See who's controlling all those big kids?
Players.
Ah, okay. Are you a nice ghost or mean ghost?
Oh, no.
You're nice? Why are you screaming?
So remember what Mark said about going deep? About giving an experience that makes you scream in a public library? This is cool. So we had coding camps this summer, and we funded this whole thing by charging $100 a week for this coding camps. This is one of the weeks. And we were able to buy the flat screen TVs, the HD screens, and Apple TV, and we got it all going. So another thing we do every summer is we replicate the flight of Spirit of St. Louis. And we use Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is now 10 years old. And the kids fly the plane in real time, 33 hours. They stay up all night, and these guys crashed only one time. But they did land successfully in Blagojevic field in France. They buzzed the Eiffel Tower just like Lindbergh did. And they flew in real-time weather. So this is using the technology to make them feel powerful. We think every child should be able to drive a Lamborghini, and they can in our public library. So, I'm going to skip stuff. But I think this is called Busy Shapes. What would Vygotsky say? Can you put a more capable other in the zone of proximal development inside of an app? This app actually does that. Notice the way the sound helps the child's finger feel powerful. The second you move, every sound is working. This isn't background music, this isn't fluff. This is sound working to tell that child that my finger's powerful. The scraping. Now, the problem jumps up. The more capable other, which is the artificial intelligence inside the app, kicks in.
What was the name of that one?
This is called Busy Shapes. And the next one's coming out next month in the series. He's getting tired. This is a 2.5-year-old. Ah, that moves. Oh my goodness. Oh, doesn't fit. Now I've got a problem. It's not working. It's not working. I did Montessori. Oh, did you see what happened? Just in the nick of time. Vygotsky swooped in and took away the constraint. Like magic. This is why we pay $500 for these things. It's called Busy Shapes. All right, in my remaining 30 seconds, I'd like to show you 20 apps. My Very Hungry Caterpillar is the first good Hungry Caterpillar app that's come out because it starts with an egg, you touch the egg, it starts to crack. You touch it again, it cracks again. Crack, 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 crack. The caterpillar pops out, and guess what? He's hungry. They finally flipped the thing upside down and let the child control a caterpillar. Just came out, it's from Story Toys. $4 worth every penny. Toby Pet Doctor builds causality, well, all that stuff, but there's 20 sick animals. You can't go wrong with it. It's just really a great social experience. Lots of multi-touch in there. You'll see a huddle of kids working on this together. Tiny Airport. Lots of language opportunities in this. Beautiful art. And everything does something completely child-driven. Good opportunity to focus on, talk about directions, up, down, left, right. Tell a Story puts you in the news using the camera. Like Bot Jr., Diane was saying, there's a whole bunch of really great programming experiences now. And if you just go into our database and you type programming or coding, there's a list of 40. And each has strengths and weaknesses. Scratch Junior is just one. Scratch Junior, by the way, is free. So download it immediately. That's a good deal because we already paid for it. It's NSF funded. So, but all of these have different ways to help children start thinking about procedures, and they're the training wheels for Scratch 2.0. You can't go wrong with any of the Endless Numbers series, and it's also free as well. Mark tells me that there's nothing in this room after, so if I go a little over, we'll be okay. And we are going to hang around for questions, because I think we've just crossed our time. This is called World Landmarks Explorer. And what's so exciting about this is that it hooks the world landmarks up, which are shown on this screen. So you can touch any of those and you can see them, right? And there's all these experiences where you just show kids information and hope some of it dribbles into their brain. But what this does that's new is that it actually shows the Little Mermaid. You can see how pretty she is, and you see where she is on a Google map that's real time. That's cool, and it zooms all the way in if your iPad isn't on the internet. Download immediately Sago Mini Friends if you work with young children, because it is specifically designed for 2 children to work together. They're sharing challenges that the app presents, and it creates another, it moves the mark in terms of social play. This is the kind of app I've been looking for a long time. App designers are starting to get smarter. They're starting to think about what is the actual behavior that the app facilitates. That's really cool. So folks, what can we turn this finger into? That's actually 2-year-old's finger. That's the 2-year-old. That was the kid that was playing Busy Shapes. I can put a million different kinds of experiences on the screen, and I can help that child grow in certain ways. We have to always remember that to a young child who's pre-operational, the world looks very differently than it does to us. We all can probably remember what it was like to look up a slide and how amazingly high it was once you got to the top. Do you remember that? And that's what this screen looks like to a young child. And so they need help. They're going to be challenged by it. But I want to go back to what Mark was saying. Listen, empower, go deep. And I think you just saw two people, and 4 people actually, that were guided by the exact same constructivist ideals. Let's help children create their own knowledge using the best tools possible. And let's not compromise on quality. And then don't forget the play part. I used to always show this slide because, you know, this is obviously a traffic sign. I was riding my bike one day, and I used to say, watch children, they'll guide us, and that's the way. But I started to realize that it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So this summer when I was riding my bike, I saw this, and I think this is more accurate. Go slow. It takes a while. Of course, watch the children, but expect delays. All right. Thanks. We'll see you next year, right, bees?